And we're live a little bit early, but that's okay. I know some of you are setting reminders and that's going to pop up. You'll pop in here at 7:30 my time in Phoenix, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. Just ask me where in the world I am this week, and I will probably be able to tell you what time it is. It's become a specialty of mine lately. So, yes, we are talking golf this week. Again, obviously, as you're watching Who's Your Caddy, a brand new show from Women of Fantasy Football produced by Club Fantasy, hosted here on the Club Fantasy YouTube channel. I'm going to move my mic closer because I just realized that I'm not even really talking in it. So, hey, I'm not feeling great this evening, but I do have a fantastic co-host for you this evening who I'm going to bring back in with me to chat with you. But before I do, I would like to say that we have now had 2 of 2 winning weeks here on Who's Your Caddy, depending on how you set up your final lineup. We did have 2 missed cuts in our lineup if you were following along, which is okay. But first time player, Wendy, she tuned in. There she is. She tuned in. She asked some questions. She took some notes, sent me a DM. We made a last minute switch because I was just not in love with that Webb Simpson pick, even though I tossed it out there. We put in Chris Kirk for her. I said, enter a small double up tournament. Not a ton of people. Just get your feet wet because it's fun to see a return. And guess what? She won. She doubled up. $5 tourney, came out with 10. Good job, Wendy. So excited for you. So yeah, let's do it again this week. We're going to talk about the American Express. I'm going to bring in my co-host for today, if I can figure out my buttons. Keith Flemming. Keith from the DFS golf writer of the Fantasy Six Pack, host of Golf and DFS Gambling Show, 2 Off the Tee, head of DFS content for Fantasy and Frames, and the host of the Daily Fix Show. Did we say enough here, Keith?
Man, I sound like I do a lot more than I actually do. So thank you so much, Kelly. I feel pretty cool now. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I think it's amazing that you're getting more people into golf and, just DFS in general, which I've been on, the boat for years, that it's so much fun. Some people take it a little too serious, but it's meant to be fun. And I completely agree with you. Something that you said right off the top is double ups, single entries. It's basically all I do. I don't do big events. I don't want to, face an algorithm and face people that are doing, 50 or 150 lineups and some of these things. And, hopefully we can give some plays that can help people have a cash again this week.
I hope so too. And something I stress in my articles that I write for Team Riser Fall, I put, I'm not building your lineup for you. That's not, you can play it that way, which is kind of how Wendy was dipping her toe in, playing it directly. But I'm so glad she asked me some questions because I was like, honestly, I really feel like we could fill a better spot for you than that Webb Simpson pick. I know I gave it, but it also has to do with how your salary shakes out, and the skill set of the players that you've all lumped together. If you've got all enormously long drivers and nobody who can putt, you're going to have a problem. And that's how some of these picks are this week. There are drivers and putters. It is possible, but I know as far as some of my picks this week, I've noted that their putting's average. It's better than the rest of the field, but as the average putter, they've kind of evened out there, but they have other pluses. So we're really going to dive into that a little bit. This is the American Express. It It does not kick off the PGA season. I'm looking at my notes, and that's something I did not
I thought you
adjust.
knew something that I didn't. I was like, man, they really have kind of changed up this format a little bit.
Well, I will say it's gonna kick off the PGA season in the contiguous continental United States there in California, and it starts on the 19th. Now, because the tournaments have been in Hawaii the last 2 weeks, we had the luxury of time to make adjustments to our lineups. So, rude awakening, we are now on, contiguous US soil, normal time zone, Pacific time zone. So make your adjustments accordingly. I like to look at them first thing in the morning when I wake up, because that may be the last time, but actually look at them the night before.
Make sure there's
Because
no
if you
withdrawals
sleep
too.
in, yeah,
'Cause I've had that happen. It's like you
you got
wake
to
up,
do
it's
that.
like somebody withdrew. It's like, no.
Yeah. Look at them the night before, which is going to be Wednesday evening. So tomorrow night, look at your lineups, make any adjustments. And if you're an early riser, you may have time to pop in and make some adjustments also. This is a pro-am format. There are 3-course rotations. Oh, I love how you even updated my little notes here. We have the Stadium course, the Nicholas Tournament course, La Quinta Country Club, which I've actually played.
Ooh.
And yeah, so I would love, Keith, if you would tell us a little bit about the format and why the heck there are 3 courses, and maybe a little bit about each of these courses.
Sure. As nice as it was to have the views in Hawaii the last 2 weeks, we are back in the States, in La Quinta, California. And this is a pro-am, much like the infamous Happy Gilmore, Bob Barker, that I'm sure you all remember from the movie Happy Gilmore. The professionals will be paired with an amateur. A lot of them obviously are celebrities, musicians, etc. this week. And that is why it's taking place over 3 courses. It's so they can fill the field. And actually, as you can imagine, rounds are going to take a long time when you have pros playing with average Joes, basically. They may be famous average Joes, but they're still average Joes. So they're going to be again on the Nicholas, La Quinta, and the Stadium course. They'll end up playing the Stadium course twice. That's the one that they will play again on Sunday. Another weird thing about this week, the cut is actually on Saturday because they want all 3 or every player to play all 3 courses, and then they make the cut. I believe that the Pro-Am ends on Saturday as well. But these are very similar courses, honestly. You got 3 par 72s. They're all relatively short, at least by today's PGA standards, all under 7,200 yards. Let's start with the PGA West, which is the Stadium course. It is the one that, again, they're going to play twice. They'll play it again on Sunday. It's been dubbed by some the sequel to Sawgrass because, again, they're both designed by Ross. I don't know if that's fair because Sawgrass is such an iconic course, but I understand where people get that. Similar to Sawgrass, there's a lot of risk and reward on this side. You're going to see more birdies and eagles than your normal tour event, but you have a lot of double bogeys or more. One of the higher double bogey or more percentages on tour up there, like higher than Augusta and Bay Hill, which are both courses that we see a lot of big numbers at every year. It's probably the hardest of the 3 courses, but again, it's not really difficult. You can make big numbers there. The other 2 are really easy. You got the PGA West Nicklaus course, obviously designed by the Bear, Jack Nicklaus. It came into rotation in 2016. It's the longest of the 3 courses at 7,100 yards, which again, for today's tour, that is nothing. These guys are consistently playing 74 to 7,600 yard courses. The longest par 4 in this course is 460 yards. That kind of shows you how short it is. There's 3 par 4s that are going to play 380 yards or shorter. I actually think maybe 1 or 2 of them, they end up moving up the tees, allowing, some of the longer hitters try to drive the green on those holes, maybe some of the amateurs. And then it also has 3 par 5s that are all relatively short, meaning that 90% of the field, if they hit a good tee shot, will be able to get there in 2. So again, a lot of birdies and eagles coming. And then finally, you have the La Quinta Country Club, which Kelly's played. I'm a little jealous. It has a field average of 26% of birdie or better on that course. Only one course on the tour has a higher average. That's Kapalua, which we obviously just came from. Remember, that is an event that we only have like 40 of the top players in the world. So in reality, it shows that this course is even easier than that because it's a full field. And just a reminder, because there's amateurs playing, the first 3 rounds particularly, you're not going to see any crazy pin locations. They're going to try to kind of put it in the middle, allow the amateurs to have a good time. And these pros are so good that they're going to take advantage of it. You're going to see real low scoring. The last 3 years, or excuse me, last 5 years, the winning score has been 20 under or better. And just if you're doing some research, because again, I think something you mentioned, Kelly, was, making tweaks to your lineup. I think, as you read and learn more information, because we're recording this on a Tuesday, don't be afraid to change your picks. Like if you find good information, don't be afraid to adjust. But some of the courses that comp, Pebble Beach, which it's kind of underestimated, playing 3 different courses in a tournament, but that really is something that the pros don't see on a regular basis. So guys that play Pebble there, well, especially consistently, they're used to playing an event with 3 different courses and doing well. And then Sawgrass, TPC Scottsdale, and TPC Summerlin are very similar in the fact that, again, they're risk reward, kind of shot makers courses. You'll see guys that are very strong tee to green and approach, do very well at those courses. And then the key stats for me this week: total birdies. Anytime you have an event that's going to be 20 under or better, a guy needs to make a lot of birdies in order to contend. So that's something you should pay attention to. The 2 strokes gains categories I looked at were tee to green and approach, because again, that's, to me, it's a ball striker's course. Look at the guys that have consistently done well here. And then the 2 that I think people won't look at as much, but Pete Dye courses are very similar. They all kind of have a similar theme to them. So I'm looking at Dye courses and seeing what guys play those courses well. That usually correlates. And the same thing for the desert positive courses, because this is a desert course, and certain players, hello, Adam Hadwin, we'll get into him a little bit later, they just play really well when they're out in the desert on these style courses. So those are the things that I'm looking at when I'm trying to kind of figure out what players I'm going to go with this week. But I'm really excited to talk about my favorite DFS plays this week, hear yours, and hopefully help those listening put together a good lineup.
Yeah, for sure. I'm paying attention to what you're saying, because I think we're gonna have a very well-rounded group of golfers between the 2 of us, because I actually created a weighted model, which I've
Love
been
that.
doing over the last couple weeks, and I did not include approach this week. I was really focused on what we talked about, that long drive. So those long hitters that may end up driving the green or getting very close to the green. So I also weighted around the green versus that approach shot. And then I weighted out putting. So yeah, I think we're going to have some really well-rounded picks. We're going to go through the tiers of salary. That seems to be kind of the easiest way to do it. Keith prefers DraftKings, so we'll use DraftKings as our baseline. But if I see something that's an anomaly, or I just want to call it out, I'll let you guys know, because sometimes if I see that the salaries are very close in number, if FanDuel drops down towards DraftKings, then I might say, hey, if you really want to play this guy, I'd play him on FanDuel, because
Right.
that seems to be an incredible value, or vice versa. So I will let you guys know if I've seen any anomalies there in the salaries between the 2 platforms. But I'm going to start with you, Keith, on this first tier, because you and I came up with the same first pick, and I want to hear why.
All right, so rightfully so, it's Patrick Cantley. He's 10,100 on DraftKings. He's one of my favorite plays to win this week at 11-1 if you gamble on golf as well. He's finished no worse than 9th in his last 3 trips here. He's gained an absurd 33.9 total strokes on the field in those 3 events. I mean, that is outrageous. That's 10 strokes on the field, basically, over the last 3 events here. He was kind of uncharacteristically sloppy at the Century. His ball striking was not good. It's really weird to see him in negative numbers for tee to green and approach and stuff. But his short game is so good, because we know Cantley's such a great, well-rounded player that it didn't matter. He still shot 18 under. He still had, I thought, a pretty good performance in one of the deepest fields that the guys are going to see all year. And I think it's so rare to see that from Cantley that he's going to bounce right back, because over his last 20 events, so this is a huge sample size, he picks up a stroke or more tee to green, off the tee, and approach. And we know he has one of the best short games on tour as well. He's just, to me, one of those guys that you can't go wrong with him here. And anytime it's a field that's going to put a priority on ball striking and just really, you got to make birdies. And he's not flashy, but Cantley's, again, one of the best guys on tour at making birdies, his birdie percentages. I think Cantley's a slam dunk play this week. Do you want me to go over the second one too, or do you want to go?
I'll chime in here on Cantley while we're on it. I mean, just exactly what you said. So he's leading the tour in these greens and regulations, 5th in strokes gained in putting so far this season. But as you mentioned, he's a great putter. And then in that model that I created that we talked about at the beginning, I used Team Riser Falls Study Hub tool, which is a membership tool. I'll just throw it out there if you want to try it. $10 off your first month using code KIP. There is a tab in there that allows you to create this weighted model. And when I did this with Cantley, looking at the stats that I mentioned around the green, putting, his driving distance, and I used greens and regulations was kind of a fourth one just to kind of throw that in there. He was ranking second when I re-rank everybody from there. So I found that really interesting. I also use a tool that allows me to see if the course is a good fit for a player. Everybody that I'm going to mention tonight will be a good fit for this course. Cantley is no exception. Here's my caveat on playing Cantley. If you're going to put the money on him, you're going to put him in there as kind of your anchor, priciest player. Know that everybody else is too. Yeah. He's going to be very highly rostered, not as highly rostered as we've seen like in last week's tournament where we're looking at some players that were like Rahm was like 30% ownership or something. We're not
and rightfully so.
Rightfully so. We're not talking that kind because there's a lot of favorites to go around this week, but you're going to need to differentiate yourself. So listen to a few of these other players tonight and find ways to zig when everybody else is zagging. Who's your second pick in this pricey tier?
So he's my favorite play to win this week. I do want to add real quickly, though, that, I worry about ownership if I have several players, that are high owned. But I say this on our football show all the time. If you feel confident in somebody, just because they're high owned doesn't mean it's not the right play. Right. You just can't have a lineup filled with those players because then obviously it's going to really limit what you can win. But if you're confident in somebody, if it's just one player and they're going to be high owned, go for it. Like I think sometimes people get obsessed with the ownership projection when, again, it's more, my lineup as a whole, how owned is it? But Will Zalatoris, 9,600, just what a golfer, man. I just really love watching this kid play. He, again, 20-1 to win this week. That's by far my favorite, but I think that's a real value. I can't believe he's at 20-1. I guess it's a strong field. Maybe that's why. And he's plus 450 to top 5, which I also like, but he's got a great record at die courses. He's got 2 top 25s at Sawgrass, which again, that's the, this is the sequel course, obviously, that they're playing for 36 holes, 2 Sawgrass. He finished solo 6 in his only appearance at the Amex last year. He finished 11th at the Century earlier this year. So he's in good form because the problem with some of these guys is they haven't played in months. We know that he's played just 2 weeks ago and he played well. And what's really great about him and why I'm really bullish on him this year is he's putting well, which if you watch Zalatoris when he first burst onto the scene and through the first half of last year, he was constantly in contention, but his putting was just really lacking. He never seemed to make putts. He just could not get the ball in the hole. He's one of the best ball strikers. It is. It's sad when you see somebody that's that good. You're hitting a little white ball, 480 yards and 2 shots to 8 feet. It's like, just knock it in, and they can't do it. I really do. I feel bad for him, not just as a golfer, but just as a person. It's like, that's so frustrating. Yeah. But he's picked up 2 strokes on the field at Century in putting, and that is a theme because he's picked up 1.5 strokes over his last 5 events. We really saw, and I believe it was the U.S. Open last year, he made a lot of putts coming down the stretch. He ultimately did not win that tournament. But from that point on, he started making putts. He got his first win in August. And we're really starting to see a different, like 2.0 version of Will Zalatoris. And when he putts well, he's just such a good ball striker that then he becomes, to me, such a value at 9,600 because he is one of those guys that he can out-hit Cantley. He can outball straight. Rahm, all these guys. The difference is those guys are much better putters. He's starting to make up that gap. And I think that they have him a little priced too low for the skill he's at. Last year, he picked up almost 6 shots tee to green at this event. That's, again, this is the kind of player that he is. But he lost a stroke and a half to the field on the greens. So if he can strike the ball like he does pretty much every week and then putt the way he has recently, I really think this is going to be the week that he gets his second win on tour. I'm very bullish on Zalatoris. He's in almost every one of my lineups.
I like it. I do. I like it. And if you missed the start of the show, we are focusing on DraftKings today just to keep a even keel. If you want to tack on anywhere between 1 and 2,000, you're going to get your FanDuel pricing roundabout if you're just trying to estimate. So yeah, my second pick this week is not Zalatoris. I think we have different ones outside of Cantlay, which is good. So my second pick this week is going to be Tony Finau, which I was high on last week. How can you not be high on Tony Finau? The man is on fire. I don't want the other shoe to drop ever. And that's kind of the story of Tony Finau, is he would last season get on these kicks and then all of a sudden like fall off the map. So
it's Charlie Brown on that football, right?
Ooh,
like every time he'd get there, they'd pull it back.
Let's not have that for a while, Tony. He's a 10-2 on DraftKings, 11-5 on FanDuel. And in the model I talked about, he's ranking 15th overall. If we want to look at putting, he shakes out at second in this field overall. And that's looking at the last 10 events, if that helps you in your thought process at all. So putting, again, is going to be very important this week. We're looking at those long drives, and then hopefully a lot of birdies and a lot of eagles from that point on. Rostership, we've talked about that a little bit, and he's only around 8% rostership on DraftKings, 10% on FanDuel. Again, as I mentioned, there are plenty of favorites to go around, so go ahead and play your favorites. And then when we get to that zag portion, that's usually around your last player that you're trying to fill and use that last bit of salary on. So we'll definitely get there. I don't need to spend a ton of time on Tony Finau because I did last week. But yeah, the man is
number
on
one
fire.
in DK scoring the last 50 rounds, to your point.
Wow, that's fantastic to know. Thank you for that. We're going to move right along to our middle price tier, which is going to be in the 8s to 9s, somewhere in there, in the thousands, 8s to 9,000s. So I'll kick this one off with KH Lee. I was feeling really good about this. And the more I played around with my model, the more I liked it. The one part that I was struggling with, again, and I mentioned this at the start of the show, some of these guys are bombers off the tee, and then the putts, they're average, and that's okay. So he lands right on the button. The average putting right now is 1.74 strokes among this field, and he hits it right on the nose. So not going to two putt, hopefully, like we've mentioned. That's what we're looking for. Rostership's looking good, 7 to 8% on both platforms. He's going to cost you 8.3 on DraftKings, 9.7 on FanDuel. Very average, very playable on both platforms. Like I said, I'm not worried because he doesn't fall below the average in putts. He strikes it off the tee over 300 yards, about 302, if I'm not mistaken. And he's landing greens in regulation 77% of the time. Excellent. I think the top might be 79%. So he's right up there getting to those greens. I feel very, very comfortable with KH Lee this week.
10
Who do you
straight
got
cuts
for us?
made too, which is always good. I like guys that make cuts consistently because
Yes.
obviously that gives you an advantage if you have all 6 golfers make the cut. I'm going with Cam Davis, 8,800. I do like him plus 450 to top 10 this week. He's finished top 30 in all 3 of his starts at the Amex, including a solo third last time he played in it. He has no real weakness in his game, which, again, on these die courses, You're going to see a bunch of different type of players have success there, but he's basically a cheaper Cantley. Like, obviously, he doesn't have quite the upside that Cantley does, but again, another guy that just across the board gains strokes and everything. In his last 20 turnings, he's gained strokes on the field, tee to green, off the tee, approach, around the greens, and putting. What more can you ask for? Just a really solid player. He finished 32nd at the Sony last week. That was despite uncharacteristically for him losing strokes on the greens. But I'm not worried about that because he's just a great putter. Over his 3 turners here, he's gained almost 10 strokes on the field putting. And I think Cam is one of those guys I used a lot last year to a lot of success. He's not a sexy pick. He's usually low owned, and he kind of flies under the radar. But what I like about him is he scores points and he makes cuts. And again, you got to have, 1 or 2 guys that are going to score 100+ points. Obviously, that you want contention to win, but then you want guys that are going to be in that 25 to 15, 25 to 10 range. And Cam Davis is just somebody that does that week after week.
You are right. I almost picked Cam Davis. I had it in there and I was like, no, because I really, really want to talk about my next guy. Well, but we talk about that rostership there. We are at 7%, probably will get close to 8% on Draftkings, and we're a little bit lower on FanDuel, which actually makes him more of a value on FanDuel currently at, 6%-ish. Probably get up close to 7. So very low. Love it. Yes, I was so torn because I did want Cam Davis too, whatever that's worth, but I went with Taylor Montgomery. I just keep seeing him popping up everywhere this week as I'm researching, and I thought, if everybody's talking about it, sometimes that's not a good thing. So I wanted to just be devil's advocate and pop him in to my model, take a look at him on my course fit thing that I use, and shoot, he fits. So let's look at it. Taylor Montgomery, 8.9 on DraftKings, super pricey on FanDuel. I probably wouldn't go there at 10 too. He ranks 18th in the weighted model of the field there, struggling most in approach. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, I personally didn't weigh approach, although I think it will come into play for anybody who's not driving over 300 for sure. It's definitely something you might want to pay attention to if you don't pay attention to it as part of your current model.
And I meant to mention, it's really the number you need to look is like 125 to 175 because it's a lot of wedges and stuff. So, I mean, it's really shorter distances. I should have kind of clarified that. They're not going to have a lot of 200 yards.
Total sense. Thank you for that. That makes total sense. And then for myself, I just happen to look at around the green, which is going to end up being very similar to that short approach, especially if they get into trouble where they're going to end up scrambling or perhaps in the sand. So I do pay attention to a lot of that as well in these situations, which is what is so great about Taylor Montgomery, because he is one of the best in this field around the green. And also from scrambling and in the sand, he's among the best. So I love that part in case things go a little awry. Like I said, I'm not sure that I'm willing to pay up for him on FanDuel, but I do really like him on DraftKings. He drives about 307 off the tee. So again, another very long driver there. Rostership is safe, 8%, both platforms. Probably won't get too much higher than that. And again, that could be a great pick now that we're getting into a middle range to differentiate yourself. But I don't know. More people may pick up on him, but I don't think so. I think he's a little bit of an odd pick for most.
I think that when guys move up, which he did obviously to the tour recently, it takes a while for them to kind of get that he's a household name. And again, I'm loving on these picks the value you're giving because he is the 14th highest price guy on DraftKings. He is 7th in DK scoring over his last 50 events. So that's what we call a bargain. I've got Andrew Putnam, 8,700. As I actually technically cheated. I have 3 in this range, but he is plus 240 to top 20. I also like him at 10 to 1 to top 5. I've really just started to get on to how good of a player Andrew Putnam is. Again, another one of these guys that's very consistent. He's finished 21st or better in 4 of his last 5 starts here, including top 15 2 of the last 3 years. So he plays this course very well. He's in great form. He finished 4th at the Sony just last week. And he is, again, one of the best putters in the world, averaging 4.2 strokes gained on the greens over his last 5 events, and an unreal 10 last week in Hawaii, which I don't, if you're not somebody that follows golf on the road, to pick up 10 strokes on the field just on the greens, you are rolling the rock. His one weakness is off the tee, which, again, this course is not as big of a deal as it is most places because they don't have really high rough. It's not a really long course. If he wants to, he can hit fairway metals off some of the tees because his iron play is normally very strong, especially here. He's gained over 6 shots on the field on approach his last 3 appearances. So as long as the off the tee doesn't kill him, which again, he lost strokes to the field in both of the years that he finished top 15 in the last 3. But he was able to make that up and approach and putting. That's what I'm hoping he does again this week. And he's one of those guys that what I like about him is say he does have a good week off the tee. You could see him really jump up and be like a surprise, potentially top 5 guy. I do want to mention Adam Hadwin real quickly before we move on because 8,200, 55 to 1 to win. If you gamble, to me, you have to at least throw a few shekels on him there at that odds, plus 450 the top 10. You want to talk about high own and a popular bet? He is going to be, but he should be. He's got 7 appearances at the Amex. He has 4 finishes of 6th place or better, including from 2017 to 2019, a 3-year stretch where he never finished worse than 3rd. So he likes this golf course, has the highest total strokes gained of any player in the field since 2018 in 4 appearances. He's picked up 36.02 strokes. Again, that's basically 9 strokes on the field each time he tees it up here. And he stated publicly many times that he feels very at home at this course and desert courses. He is from the Phoenix area. He talks about that he plays courses just like this one, just on the weekends with his buddies. So I think Hadwin at 8,200 on DraftKings is a really good value. And also, again, at 55 to 1, I think that with his success, it's really good odds for a guy, again, that has 4 top 6 finishes and 7 starts here.
I love that. What do they say? Horses for courses?
Exactly. Yep. He is definitely a horse for this course.
There we go. Adam Hadwin. You heard it here. Hopefully first. All right. Let's get to that bottom of the barrel there. We have a little money left in our salary cap. Who do we pick up here with 6,000 to 7,000 left? Hopefully. I'm going to start with Thomas Detry at 7.6 on DraftKings and far pricier on FanDuel. I don't think I would go with him there at all. So on DraftKings, I like him at 7.6. It's a very good value to me, actually. It's a huge monster value is what I put in my notes because in my modeling, he's ranking 6th overall. Again, I just put in distance putting around the green and greens and regulations. He's averaging 314 yards off the tee there, and 68% of them are within regulation, greens and regulations. So that's great. I've mentioned that the driving distance is going to come into play, and it's not because it's a long course, which Keith definitely mentioned for us. This does not have anything to do with the course being very long, so you need someone long off the tee. It's more about picking up as many birdies and eagles as possible. So if I've got this guy who's going to, pound it down and take fewer strokes to get to the green, that's what I'm kind of looking at. Not on everybody, but on, if I can, maybe 3 of 5, 2 of 5 for sure. I want some very long drivers out there. He's one of the better putters in this field. He hits the average. He's not excelling in putting, but there's a whole half of the field that's far worse. So he's an average putter out there. Like we mentioned, it's 1.74 strokes. His average in this field so far in the last in this season. And yeah, solid. I like it. It's
You do it
very
again too.
inexpensive.
12th in DK scoring. He is the 32nd most expensive player. I will be adding him to lineups. I love that. That is again, that's one of the things I really look at each week is where are that in DK scoring over they usually keep for 50 rounds. And then where are they priced? Because I mean, that is the
Yeah.
definition of a value. You're getting a
Yes.
guy that over the last 50 rounds is 12th in scoring on DK, and he's the 32nd most expensive golfer. I love that play.
I'm writing that down because I actually have not paid too much attention in their scoring, and I should. I pay so much attention to see if I can pit my own picks against myself and like see if they shake out. So if they shake out, it works for me. And to
Right.
hear another set of validation, I love that. So I'm going to add that to my list.
It's just an easy way to know because again, the goal is to score as many points as possible, right?
Exactly.
So with it being at least like on the site that I use, it's 50 rounds that they keep up with. That's a big sample size. I mean, that's over 10 tournaments. So you kind of have an idea, you know, again, I mean, that one really jumps off the table when somebody's 20 spots higher than their price. That's a really great value. Do you want me to go over one of mine or do you want to go for your second?
Yeah, no, go ahead. I just don't tell Keith, for I'm making him my teacher in the DFS world.
I'm happy to
All?
teach
Aren't we
anybody
all?
that I can, but I don't claim to know everything by any
You know
means.
what?
I'm still learning.
We're all about teaching. You must have missed the star of the show where Wendy, she learned everything about DFS and
I
won
love
her
that.
first ever
I
round.
love
So
it.
it's everything we love to do happened. So good job. Now let's hear your value pick.
So the more expensive one is, and they're in the same price range, so you could use either one of these. But David Lipsky, 7,300. I like him 8-1 to top 10, 4-1 to top 20. Coming off a fourth place finish last week at Sony. If you notice, there's a lot of guys that finished T4th in my lineup. I really do like to see a guy play well the week before. Another thing that I've noticed or read yesterday was that top 20s here, they've played the week before. I think it's like 60% of the players over the last 5 years.
Okay.
So it is good for them because, again, some of these guys are not teed up since like November in an actual PGA event. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your lineup. But he was third in the field in birdies made and gained almost 5 strokes on the field, tee to green and approach last week. So there's 3 of the stats that I'm looking at this week.
Yeah.
He made a bunch of birdies. He was good tee to green. He was good on approaches. He finished 14th in his first appearance at this tournament last year. And again, I always love to see a guy that's only played a tournament once and done well, because that means that their eye as a golfer fits the course, because you just don't go out and play courses well unless it fits your eye, or until you learn it, which it just shows his instincts are correct. He should learn more information about the course as he goes. And just in really good form. He is a guy that both of these guys actually, I didn't aware how well they've played, because it's kind of been that off season when people aren't paying as much attention to golf, myself included. Thank you a lot, football. But he's had 3 straight top 25s on tour. He's made the cut in 7 of 9 and moved up 65 places in the world rankings just in the last 4 months. So he's playing very well. And I think he's very reasonably priced. And again, I like guys, especially in events like this, that make a lot of cuts, because the variance of the winners and the people that have success is a little bit bigger on a Ross course than your traditional weeks. So therefore, I want somebody who consistently makes the cut than somebody who, and you know who those golfers are, they'll score 90 points one week and then they'll miss the cut 3 weeks in a row. So I do like Lipsky a lot at 7,300.
I like Lipsky too. I've played him plenty of times when I'm looking for that kind of flyer to stick in there. There's a handful of guys you can just really rely on to at least make the cut. So I like that. My second last tier here is Dean Burmester. There we go. Dean Burmester.
I'm a country boy. You don't have to apologize about getting names wrong. I butcher every weird name there is. So
I do too. I feel bad, but we're going to go with it. Dean B. 7.4 on DK and a very close 8.8 on FanDuel. So this will work out for you if you are a FanDuel player and you don't have much salary left. Very still inexpensive on FanDuel. If you don't know why, they have an extra $10,000 salary cap. So that's why you see these salaries differ the way they do. So yeah, great play on either platform. Also, very, very low rostership, looking at around 3% on both platforms. If the word gets out, it could get as high as 5, which is still super low. He's a great fit for this course, according to my research. He's another bomber off the tee at 309 yards averaged, 72% greens and regulations. He's fantastic around the greens. Again, this is another one with some average putting in comparison to the rest of the field, but I'm not super worried about it because when you pull together the skills that I felt were important for this week, he is shaking out second overall
Wow.
in my rankings.
And that's why
So,
it's so important to come up with a model and trust your system.
mhm,
And that's where, there's people that make a very good living playing DFS golf. And that's what it is. They don't necessarily just look at what most people are going to recommend
right.
for a certain tournament. They kind of go with their gut and off their experience. And that's why I do really like building out your own modules, because at least then you're picking off of your picks, right? Like it's
Yes.
it's in your system and not somebody else's.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're using several different things to kind of check yourself, like you mentioned, you might check their points on DraftKings. You might use a course fit tool. You might use your model. You might use a pre made model. And when you piece it all together, if your guy keeps rising to the top, that's your guy. At least that's how I
Right.
do it.
And to trust your instincts, which I
Yes.
always tell people, golf more than any other sport, the more you watch it, the more you just learn what type of players play certain kind of courses well. And sometimes they may not even be great form, but you just know, like, this is a Matt Kuchar course, or
Yes.
this is, a website, or
JJ
what
Spawn.
exactly. And I think sometimes we get too obsessed with the numbers when it's also still, if you watch golf a lot, you know who
Mm-hmm.
these guys are, and you should just trust your gut. All right, my favorite play this week at any price, because he's like criminally underpriced, is Ben Griffin, 7,200. I love him at 11 to 1 to top 10 this week, plus 450 to top 20. He's made the cut in 8 of his last 9 starts, top 30 in 6 of those 9. He's moved up 130 spots in the world golf
Holy smoke.
ranking in the last 9 tournaments. He finished 12th in Hawaii, where he gained 1.7 or more shots on the field in tee to green, off the tee, approach, and putting. He's playing so well. He's a really terrific ball striker, averaging over 3 shots gained over his last 5 tournaments in tee to green and approach. Obviously, there's always risk, in any price range, but when you're taking somebody who has never played in a tournament, which he has never played here, but he has experience in multi-courses events. He played at the RSM in November, finished tied 29th. And then again, I've been bragging about your DK values. He is 11th on DK scoring. His last 50 rounds, he is the 46th most expensive player in the field. I have a lot of Ben Griffin this week. I think he is going to be a star just in general. He's a great
Yeah.
young player, but I really like him this week at his price point, 7,200 on DK.
I love it. I'm definitely making note of that one. I am. I want to take it. I want to plug it in all my things. I want to see. Just it's fun to find proof on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really encouraging, especially when you're trying to develop some sort of strategy each week, week to week. If you missed the top of the show, I'm proud to say that however you made your build, you were likely a winner again last week, 2-2. And I see in the chat that Gator J says Keith led him in the right direction this past weekend too. So
That was in football. I will admit my golf plays this last week were not great, but the football ones were.
you know what? I had the 2 missed cuts, but sometimes you can
Oh, no, it
overcome that by just having some random ass player in there that
Well, it's again
comes
the
through.
point where you mentioned double ups, single entries,
Yes,
is again, you can survive that to where if
you
that was a
can.
multi-entry big field, you're
You'd be
done.
out. Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you use these picks for your top 10s, your top 20s, I'm a big fan of those type of props. And I would say that the majority of these picks that we've given you today can fall into that category. If you want to take some time to watch the show over again and take some notes, Keith has given you the odds on his picks. And I'd love to see how those pan out. Gosh, this was so fun. And I normally only go like 30 minutes, 20 minutes. This was
Time
a
flies
good
when you're having fun. Come on, Kelly.
it
You know that.
was a good, fun, fat 45 minutes. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. You can tweet, you can DM at Kelly and Phoenix, or reach out to Keith at Keith Flemming on Twitter. Man, gosh, that was fun.
And
You
we would
guys,
really appreciate, if it's okay, I'm sorry, just to
no, go
follow
for it.
our DFS football show. It's called the at the Daily Fix on Twitter. And me and my co-host, if you love the kind of information that we gave here, we are analytical freaks. We love data, and there's a lot of it on there. We've had a really good year this year, and I would really appreciate the follow if you're into DFS football.
Yes, do. Please do. And you had mentioned a tool you use. Is this a tool that you're affiliated with? I don't mind you sharing it.
I
Not.
am not affiliated with it. I'm not getting paid for it, but I will say that it's Fantasy National Golf Club, which they have some really great information. It's one of those deals that I always tell people, if you are going to do this consistently, I know you look at like the subscription price or whatever, and you're going, man, this sucks. But I promise you in the long run, it'll pay out. And that's, I went through this first year I did DFS golf about 5-6 years ago, where I didn't want to pay the piper. And even again with Fantasy National, which ain't paying me nothing, or giving me like a free subscription, but I still get it because it's just so important to have, that information at your fingertips.
It really is. And it saves you so much time and research to
Mm-hmm.
have all of this data pulled. It's not, just random. It's scraped every week from tournaments. Some go back. The tool I use goes back 10 events. Some go back 25 events, 50 events. Some go back an entire season. So you just want to take a look at how old that data is and how it comes together. But it looks like we do have a good question in here from Wendy. What's an acceptable salary amount to have left over after you've made your roster? My answer is any leftover money is an acceptable amount after you've made your roster, because hopefully you built your roster with players that you feel confident in utilizing. So for me, I don't really pay any attention to what I have left over after I've hit that last button.
So again, for me, it depends on the size entry you're in. If it's a multiplayer big field, I think you need to use basically every dollar, or at least as close to as possible, because again, they're getting those salary based off of past performance, point totals, etc. So by basically leaving dollars on the table, the potential, again, because it's just potential, I understand that, but is less likely than it would be with others. But I've always said that if it's only a few $100s, go with it. Like, because what happens is you start tinkering with your lineup, and then next thing you know, you don't even remember who the hell you had in like 20 minutes ago because you've changed the whole damn thing. So I always say that if it's like more than 300 is when I would worry about, wait a minute, I'm probably can like upgrade one of my players here and get a better player in. But if it's just a few $100, don't stress over it, because you'll just end up having a panic attack from making all the moves that you can potentially make with just a few $100 of salary left over.
That's actually a great point, and it goes, Wendy, hand in hand with what we discussed in that DM. You take the salary from one player, we're going to put it towards a different player that would be a better fit for that lineup. And that's exactly the illustration that we had right here. So perfect. Wendy is now following you, Keith. Royal Slade tunes in every
Thank you
week.
very much.
Great show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, Keith, thank you. And thank you for sharing your projects and being a part of
Absolutely.
this.
Had a blast. And again, we're going to be starting a DFS gambling and podcast on Fantasy Six Pack. And I would love to have you on when we do that. I told them we have to wait for football season to be over, because I get obsessed again with all the numbers for DFS football. But I told them the minute that is over, so look for like the first or second week of February, we'll get rolling. And man, the majors are my favorite. For y'all that have not done DFS, man, the majors are just an absolute blast. There's so much history, course knowledge, etc. I just think there's really, kind of you can get an edge that you can't most weeks there.
So much fun. I would absolutely love to be a guest with you. And I'm sure throughout the season, maybe I can have you back again. There's no harm in
Anytime,
having somebody
anytime,
back
Linda.
multiple times.
You let me know. I will be here.
Thanks so much, everybody. I don't have a cool theme song or anything, so I'm just going to hit that end button and we'll do like a weird little countdown and be like, bye.